Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and we are joined today by a woman that I admire so very deeply, Imani Perry. Imani Perry is the author of 7 books, including Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, which was a past Stacks book club pick, and her latest book, South to America, A Journey Below the Mason-Dixon Line to Understand the Soul of a Nation. This book is phenomenal. She is an American interdisciplinary scholar of race, law, literature, and African American culture, and she is currently the Hughes Rogers Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. And today we talk about going back to the South to write her latest book, The Seduction of Beauty, and the historical importance of a sweet tooth. Imani will be back with us at the end of the month to discuss A Mercy by Toni Morrison for the Stacks Book Club on Wednesday, March 30th. If you like The Stacks and want more of it, please head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack. You will get perks like bonus episodes, virtual book club, discounts and merch, and shout outs on the show. Speaking of, here are some of our latest members of the Stacks Pack: Amethyst Jones, Melissa D., Rachel Annunziata, Krista Atwell, Beth Mowbray, Jamie Kearney, Wendy Hildebrand, Shannon Bullock, Jess Lee, and Nat. Thank you all so much for joining the Stacks Pack and putting your money behind the work of this show. There would truly be no podcast without the Stacks Pack. So if you like this show, please head to patreon.com/thestacks and join. Okay, now it's time for my conversation with the Imani Perry. All right, everybody, I am very thrilled today. I am joined by one of my favorite writers and thinkers, author, lawyer, historian, professor, all-around genius person, and notably a literary mother, which is important as well. Imani Perry, welcome to the Stacks.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to talk to you.
I'm so happy to have you. I think you are the first author I've ever had on the show after we've done their book for book club.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've had a few people before, and then we chose the book, but we did Breathe like a year and a half ago. We did it summer
Yeah.
2020, so almost 2
Which
years ago.
also, thank you so much for that.
Ugh,
I really appreciated, your support and encouragement and all the wonderful things that you said about it. So
well,
thank you.
everyone, you can go back and listen. I was with KSA. He and I, we went in. We love the book. We love you. But so for people who aren't familiar with you and your work, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. The self-description part is always sort of tricky. I mean, I guess the most concise way I would say who I am is I am an intellectual, a creative intellectual, a writer of creative nonfiction as well as scholarship. I study African American culture and literature, but also history and legal history. And I guess the energy behind everything that I try to do is to think about how we use the imagination to move us towards something closer like the beloved community and how to be in right relation to each other. And so my job is I'm a professor, my life is I'm a mother, but that's sort of like the zeitgeist or the soul of what I'm trying to do here.
I love that. I love the creative intellectual part because I think in reading your latest book, South to America, I kept thinking about the ways in which you were writing history in a way that it didn't feel like history. And
Hmm.
not that it didn't feel like history because it was like accessible for like 7th grade readers, but in the way that it
Right.
didn't feel like history because you made it feel it was like so creative how you did it. Like
Oh,
it was
thank
like
you.
I
Yeah.
don't even I really
Well, right.
struggled to like
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
right, it doesn't so South America does not fit a pre-existing genre, although I
Right.
guess there are books that are like it in the sense of sort of books that move through space and time at the
Mhm.
same time
Mhm.
and are books of encounter. But it's not like a sort of like it's not history as a genre in the sense that like when you write a book that's a work of history, which I've done before, you're telling a story and you're putting up, and it has to have an argument, and you're corralling your evidence in support of the argument. This is not an argument driven book. It is a kind of witnessing encounter driven book. And it's a lot of its focus is on how cyclical events that we
Right.
describe as historic are, right? So we're living in the repetition of these tensions or conflicts, particularly around questions of difference and justice and the like. And so, right, so it couldn't be for me to write the book that this needed to be, I couldn't tell it in a traditional history fashion. Right.
Right. Okay, so let me ask you this because I know you're a Virgo, right?
With
I
Leo rising at moon.
Okay, great. I'm a Leo. Very, I feel like this is why we're connected a little bit. And I think it's important that you're a Virgo because I need you to explain to me how the hell you wrote this book
Oh,
because
yeah.
you go through like a bazillion places and you're
Hmm.
pulling on a gazillion threads and you're talking
Yes.
about, the colonial times and you're talking about civil rights times and you're talking about the
Yeah.
1920s and you're talking about reconstruction, you're talking about yesterday and you're talking about the future and you're talking about it in all these different places and the food and the language, and sometimes you're talking about a really famous person that we've all heard of and sometimes you're talking about someone we've never heard of, and like
Hmm.
how did you pick where to go and what to write about, and did you start with a
Yeah.
list and then did some places not make the cut, and like I just have so many questions around the how of this work.
Yeah, I mean, so architecture is really important for me. And architecture at the level of the book, at the level of so the book is sort of three movements, and they're all shaped by the environment, but also the figures who show up in the landscape, the different parts of the South. But structure is also important at the level of the relationship between the chapter and the sentences. So there's a lot that got cut out, right?
Mm,
So if I'm sort of traveling to a place, let's say Florida, right? So for Florida, it was important to understand Florida is a place that we need to understand in terms of its history of violence and the site of conquest, because if we tell the story of Florida, we actually push back the beginning date of this American project to
mm,
the 1500s, right? And that was violent conflict. So the first sentence, and it has a distinct story, but it has a story that in some ways is representative. So the first sentence is Florida is a pistol for a reason because it's shaped like a gun, but
right,
that captures the Florida, but also a pistol in the biblical sense of a story, right? So it
right,
has this kind of story that is instructive for us broadly. So the sentences moved through like that. So even the examples, because, I'm an associative writer, so I'm making associations between things that seem, but that's a quilting process, right?
right,
So I'm kind of quilting in various examples to illustrate each point and making sure then throughout the entire body of the text that each point hits at least three times, right? So it's structural, which required a lot of
I
outlining
was gonna
and a
say.
lot of a lot of killing my darlings. There's a lot of stuff that I wanted to be in the book that just didn't fit. It would go off the rails, and I'd
Right,
be like, it's too far, to push people to the edge, and then but to still hold them is tricky, right?
right,
And you never know if you're going to hit it right, but there are times when I was like, yeah, this is too far,
right.
gotta cut that part. So a lot of outlining, a lot of restructuring.
But when you went into certain places, like when you
Hmm.
started the project, did you have a list of specific places you
Hmm.
wanna go, like specific cities? And then did you have an idea of what you wanted to talk about in each of those places, or was your visit kind of the starting point for
It was back and forth.
Okay, just
So
depended on the
so there are
place.
places, yeah, well, some places I had an idea, like I knew from the beginning North Carolina was going to be about religion, like
Okay,
that I knew, but other places, and I knew Alabama was going to be a lot about mental health stuff, but other places I didn't quite know, or things got moved around. Like Knoxville was supposed to be about sugar, but then I wound up not going back to Knoxville because of COVID. So
got
the
it.
sugar had to go elsewhere, right? So but I should also say, like, there's a lot that I don't tell about each place I visit because the chapter has to fit into what I'm trying to do in the chapter. So there's a lot of pruning even in talking about the visit itself. You know what
Right,
I
right,
mean?
right,
Like,
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
And that's how your brain works, you're saying? Like, you sort
Hmm.
of think in that way. How did you I this is me not even able to formulate my question, so this will show you how my brain works. I have a lot of difficulty with my brain of, like, trying to take how my brain works and make it productive for me for the work that I
Mm,
do. Is that something that's part of your process where you take sort of your thinking that is connected with all the different threads, but you have a practice to make it more structured for writing?
yeah.
Or how does that work?
I mean, I think it's Both. That's such a good question. That's hard to answer. I mean,
Yeah.
it is ritual, right? Like, so one, the practice of writing and the practice of reading every day, right? I mean, reading is the single most important part of writing to me, right? And so that's a piece of it. And writing that's not necessarily toward a goal, but actually the discipline of writing, I think is really
Mm,
important. Um, but I also think, and I do believe that you work with how you feel, right? So you don't try to adopt another person's practice. You find the practice that
right.
works for you. But there's also the part that is the urgency of things that you want to say, right? Or that you want
Right.
to put out in the world. And that's ultimately the biggest driver, right? And it's like the how, right? You know the what and you know the why, right? Because that's the passion,
Right.
that's the
Right. Right.
values.
Right.
But then the how is a constant act of experimentation. And I guess you sort of like chip away at it every day, right?
Yeah.
That's what we
Yeah.
do.
No, I love that. Okay, this is not your first book. This is your seventh published book.
It
And I'm
is.
wondering a little bit about that because this is your first New York Times bestseller, right?
It is. Yes.
And so I mean, you're brilliant. I think people
Thank
who've read
you.
your work know this about you. You're clearly like very rigorous in the work that you do and your process. And I know from what I've read that this is not necessarily, a better book than your other books. What do you make of this being a New York Times bestseller? Do you make anything of it? Do you think it's the
Oh yeah.
time? Do you think it's like
Oh, it's the structure. It's being with the big press. It's
mm,
the difference between an institution that can and did deeply invest in this book.
mm,
I mean,
yeah,
it's as simple as that. And I want to say that because I think that from my own experience and for many's from the outside in, it looks like magic when something hits a best-selling
sure,
list, as
sure.
opposed to there was months of rollout preparation for this
Yeah,
book, right? I mean, and that's normal for books that wind up getting that kind of attention.
right,
Every once in a while, a book from a small press hits big, but
right.
that's very unusual. And that usually it's the time or there's some interview that lights a few. But
Yeah,
so I'm very grateful, but I also think it's really important to both note that there is a big difference when you have an institution that is well resourced behind your book,
right.
and that there are books that live for generations that had very little support behind them and still will have a vast impact in the long term. And I just want writers to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I know as someone who gets pitched a lot of books regularly, which
Hmm.
books have that marketing and
Yes, right?
publicity resources put behind them. And I do think that it often translates to, interviews and all of the things that lead
Hmm.
a book to be. But also, to be fair, I'm going to be hard pressed to see if this book isn't one of the best books of the year. It's just so good and it's so
Thank
smart.
you.
And like, my only fear for this book is that it's too smart for a lot of people. Like that it's just
Thanks.
like it's like, oh, this isn't just something you can like read quick and be
No,
done
no,
with. Like
it's
you have to allocate time with it. And I did listen to some of it on the audiobook and that's
yeah.
fantastic. You do all the voices,
Thank
which I
you.
love, love, love,
Thank you.
love, love,
Thank you.
love. Okay, I have some personal questions for me.
Yes.
These are sort of like advice questions. Number
Okay.
one, and the most important is how did you find your family? I want to find my people
Oh,
so bad, and I can
yes.
only get to my grandparents. My dad was born in 1935. My grandparents were born in the 1915, and I can't get past it.
Well, I gave a bunch of different sites. I mean, I started with Family Search because it's free. That's the
Okay.
the website that's owned by the Mormons. And then after I had done a lot, then I invested in paying for Ancestry.com and I did 23andMe and I've done the DNA testing, which I know is not well advised, but I did it.
I did
And
it too.
I found a lot of people that way. A lot of people that way. But I think a lot of it is just cross-referencing and also creative spellings.
Mm,
So names are spelled differently, particularly in Black folks, in our records, right? They
right.
just from generation to generation. It's a lot of census records, property records. The good thing about Ancestry is that you can also connect to other people's trees. So sometimes relatives, like I found a
Mm,
relative who looks almost exactly like me and someone else's fit, like she had just gone to the mountains of South Carolina and taken pictures from an older relative who neither of us knew, and then found this
wow.
picture of this woman. And my son is like, "Take that woman's picture off the wall because it's creepy because it looks like you in old timey clothes." Right? So
I love that.
So it's yeah, so it's it try those sites.
Okay.
They're good, and people
Okay.
are friendly, so they talk you
Yeah.
through the yeah.
Because you found all the way back to the
1700.
1700s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in the car listening
Yeah.
to you say that, getting mad, being like, I gotta ask her about this. How does she do
Yeah.
it?
Well, let me tell you something. So after someone read the book, this is just a couple of weeks ago, and said, I have actually found more information about that ancestor of yours through the Maryland Historical Society.
Wow.
So that's also the more you talk about it, like there are other
Yeah.
people who are, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So cool. Okay. Another personal question for me, and people who listen to the show will know this. One of my favorite books, and actually probably my favorite movie, is Gone with the Wind, which I
Okay.
know is
Yes.
highly problematic. And I get that. I want to talk about that kind of art though for a second,
Okay.
because I want to know, like, can we like it, and how can we reckon with what the art is and the problems that are held there without just being like, this is a bad thing and we should get rid of it?
Right. That's such a good question. I mean, I am not on the side. It's funny. I had an interview the other day with Ali Velshi on his show on MSNBC, and he asked, "How should we rewrite To Kill a Mockingbird for it to be less problematic?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not for rewriting things.
Right,
Like we
right.
supplement, right?" I mean, and this is interesting too because the Tara, right, as the house as or the
Yes.
plantation as a character is a really interesting device, for example, and I think it's a powerful device that still shapes so much experience and is relevant for Black people, like, right, and this is why we sort of are fixated on home ownership and getting a house and
Mhm,
getting a land, like
mhm.
this motif. So I don't think we throw things away. I think we talk about them honestly and also attend to why they're appealing to us,
Right.
and also use that, right, for the creation of art. Like if I read I love Borges. I read Borges all the time. Borges was a
Mm.
horrific racist. A horrific racist. I mean, really, like not you sort of
Right. Right, right.
unapologetically. And so I don't like that, but I'm learning a great deal and I from the work, and I take pleasure in the work, right? And I think we just have to be honest about that. I think there's a different question when it's someone who is alive and who's earning proceeds from the work,
Yeah,
for example,
sure.
right? But if we're talking about think some historic work, and then tell the truth, fuller story, right?
Yeah,
About what the plantation household was like, right? The
yeah.
read the wind done gone with it, right? Like I mean, I say,
Right. Okay. Great. I
yeah,
feel better. When you mentioned it in the book, and I was like, I'm gonna ask about this too.
yeah,
Okay. I have one other personal thing, which is just a comment. You have a sweet tooth.
I do.
Me too. Another thing I found out that we have in common while reading your book. I was
Yes,
loving all the references to what you were eating.
I
Your honey
love
bun that
sugar.
you got at the store. I was like, oh,
Yes.
she has a sweet tooth. We love
I have
this.
a huge sweet tooth, and I'm actually not eating sweets right now because I'm
Mm.
saving my sweet tooth up for when I go to New Orleans
Oh.
because I want beignets. But I have such an intense sweet tooth. I have to de-sugar myself pretty regularly, like to let it go.
Just you
But
cut it
yeah,
off cold turkey.
I do. I have to at times, and I have the headaches and the withdrawal.
Oh
But
my
I mean, there's
gosh.
also, it's a big part of Southern culture, and
Yeah.
I wanted to think about sweetness not in the shaming way, but I wanted to talk about what it meant for people who had such hard scrabble lives and with limited resources, wanting a little bit of sweetness and wanting to give a little sweetness to
Mm,
each other. And that it's a tenderness, right? It's a balm. It's also, though, not unlike the things that are the kind of feelings that drive meth addiction and
sure.
lean and all those. I mean, there's a lot of suffering and a
Hmm.
lot of very
Hmm.
vulnerable people. And I wanted to tell that story without it being sociological,
Yeah.
or without it
Yeah.
being like, judgmental. Like, and so the best way is to be honest about it for me. Like, when I'm tired, when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm sad, just some sweetness just like takes the edge off.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I have a sweet tooth. I'm gonna say, I mean, I definitely felt like in reading this book, my dad and his family, they're from Baton Rouge and they moved out here in the 30s. And so I've always really related to Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns, because my dad
Hmm.
took, the exact same path as the doctor,
Yes.
pretty much. But reading your book reminded me that so much of who I am and so much of like the pathology of my family is still rooted in Louisiana, because my dad
Mm-hmm.
was very young. He was 2 when they moved out here. But,
Yeah.
just like this book really, it added so much to my understanding of just like little tiny things that I just thought were my own, unique quirks. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, that comes from somewhere. So I really, appreciated that. I do want to ask you one more thing, which is in the beginning of your book. You talk about capitalizing white, as
Yeah.
in white people. And I
Mm-hmm.
would love for you to sort of explain that because I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
conversation about capitalizing black and there's
Mm-hmm.
some disagreement
Yeah.
about capitalizing white.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and Nell Painter, the historian, actually wrote a wonderful piece about the value of capitalizing white. I mean, capitalizing black to me has always been not just important, but appropriate, right?
Mhm.
Because it
Mhm.
it describes a people, right? It's like it's
Right.
not just a color, right? But black is produced in this country through whiteness, right?
Mm.
White actually is it is a an organizing social category. It created other categories. It disciplines people. It was used to sort people according to law, according to status, And so to make it lowercase, particularly in this book, I thought would have been disingenuous.
Mm.
It is actually a very important marker of identity, right? No less significant, but more significant than American,
Right.
right? Or European or African. And so I thought it would have been dishonest to make white a lowercase.
Right.
It's the thing that is moving all of this about. And that doesn't mean, I think the difficulty people have is that the implication is that the capital means it's important in terms of it being a virtue, like it's a good thing.
Sure.
It just is,
It just
you
is.
know, right? I
Right.
mean, now what people do with it, that's an open question. And I also, in it's not as though I have a position that in other books I necessarily would still capitalize white, but for the point here, right, to name what has happened here,
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
it's important. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, this is my last question about the book, and it's sort of a big one, so good luck to you. Uh, so one of the things you talk about is like how the South bears the brunt of our shame in this country. That like a lot of,
Yeah.
the way that we think about America, we sort of are like, oh, and then there's the South, the bad kid, and they're a dropout and they
Right.
suck. Do you think that there's something connected to that idea in the way that we're seeing a lot of these bills that are coming out of Southern states, like the book banning and also the book
Yeah.
bannings? And knowing that that's also happening in other non-Southern states, like, do you
Right.
think that it's like easier to just focus on what's happening in Texas and Florida and Mississippi and Tennessee and not to acknowledge that it's happening in Arizona because it is like part of a
Mhm.
narrative? Or do you think that there is something about the South that is purposefully being cruel to children?
Oh no, I mean I think it's worse in the South without question. And that's to do with politics. I think the thing that for me is important, there's a couple things. One is that part of the argument is that the South leads the way in terms historically for better and worse, often
Mm,
for worse, right? So
okay.
what as the South goes, so goes the nation. So these are harbingers, right? In the same way that the environmental crisis that the South is facing is coming to the rest of us, this kind of vile targeting of
Mm,
vulnerable children is not going to end in the South. This hostility to learning, to knowledge, is not going to end in the South. It's often that, and I think it's part of the way to get that is to understand the red state, blue state thing is largely a fiction. It is a fiction predicated on the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a product of Southern power, right?
right.
Historically, right? And the slaveocracy, right? So it all is sort of hinges on this. So the power of the South is sort of this red zone is a fiction because the whole country is purple. It's
Right.
always the case that the majority of white people vote with what is now a kind of a party that is like a neo-fascist party, right? The
Mhm.
Republican
Mhm.
Party.
Mhm.
So it would be so naive to think that these things are going to stay there given the power of this ideology all over the country, right?
Right.
So it's a testing ground, right, for what's coming. And it is always because of the ability of the way that sort of right wing elites can control politics in the South. It can be an aggressive testing ground because they have
Mm,
so much more leeway, right?
right.
And they have these very old ways of keeping people out of civic participation that they can pull out like a trick rabbit, but it's not, those things can be, the Southern strategy, quote unquote, did not just, didn't just rest upon the South, right? I mean,
Right.
it grew. And so I think it's just important for us to, I know that, and I especially thought about this during COVID,
Hmm.
like not like we're not in COVID anymore, but
Right.
like in the
Heavy
worst state,
COVID. Yeah. Big
heavy
COVID.
COVID, like when people are talking about not folks not masking, and they would talk about, well, of course people aren't masking in Alabama and Mississippi, but like I'd go, I'd walk around here in Philly and there'd be people who are unmasked, but
Right.
it makes people feel safer to think these things are happening out there, but it's not accurate ultimately, and I think it allows us to be passive
Mm.
towards issues that are national and even global. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that. And also just the idea that, like you're saying, like that the whole country is purple. And also in a lot of these states that are controlled by the most red
Mm-hmm.
Republicans, they have the most black people,
They do.
And it's like,
Yeah.
so even though their representatives are white, racist, et cetera,
Yeah.
that is not indicative of the people who live there. And it's more
No.
indicative of the structures of gerrymandering and,
Yep.
electoral
Gerrymandering,
college
the
and all these things,
composition of the court, all of that. Yeah.
all of that.
Right.
So, yeah. Um, I think. I think that's my last question for now about the South,
Okay.
though we're going to talk a little bit more about it at the end of the month when we talk about a mercy. We're
Yeah.
going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back from our break. So we do this once a month. I didn't prep you at all for this. So this is where you get
Okay.
to show off your skills. It's called Ask the Stacks. People email me, they ask me for book recommendations. So we're going to give a recommendation based on this little letter from Kelly M., who says, I'm just getting started getting into narrative nonfiction and investigative journalism books. I read and loved the book about Jonestown that you always recommend, as well as I'm in the middle of Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. I know you have recommended a lot of these books, but I'm hoping you and your guest can give me some great recs for continuing exploring these genres. I've always been more of a fiction reader. So I'll
Hmm.
go first. I'll give a few and then I'll let you think and come up with some others. Okay, Kelly. So this first one I'm recommending because apparently there's a Hulu show coming out about it, and it's one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors, which is Under the Banner of Heaven by John Krakauer. It's about
Okay.
fundamentalist Mormons, and there's a murder in there.
Ooh.
It's so good. So that's my first. And I think what's the guy's name from Tick Tick Boom? Andrew Garfield is in it. So I'm very excited about that. My
Okay.
next one is sort of a memoir, but it has some narrative nonfiction investigative journalism moments, which is Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. I
Yes.
think she does such a beautiful job of sort of telling a story. So if you're a fiction person, there'll be a through line, but also she's talking about structural things as well. And sort of like you, Imani, the structure of that book is so
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my last one is The Devil's Highway by Luis Alberto Urrea, which is about, it was written, I think, in 2004, and it's about immigrants coming to America through Mexico. It's a group of men and their experience, and it also kind of has a narrative story running through it, as well as a lot of researched bits about sort of the history of immigration to America from Central and South America, and sort of how, all of a sudden there was a border when there wasn't one and all of that stuff. And it's a modern classic. So those are mine. Imani, you don't have to do 3. You could do like 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you want.
Well, I will do a couple. I mean, one is they're old though. Truman
Great.
Capote's in Cold
Ugh,
Blood, which is
yes.
right, kind of because it's an investigative journalism murder mystery story, but it really pushes the genre of narrative nonfiction. It's absolutely brilliant compositionally. James Baldwin's Evidence of Things Not Seen, which is a direct influence for me for South to America, but also because he goes to Atlanta in this really key moment in the wake of the Atlanta child murders in the 80s. And it just is so evocative about the structure of politics in a city that calls itself the city too busy to hate, but which is very unequal. And of course, always South to a Very Old Place, which is the most direct influence, but it's Albert Murray goes on assignment back to the South. He's living in New York at the time. He goes on assignment back to the South to figure in 1971 to figure out what has happened in the post-civil rights moment. And it's a beautiful rendering of the kind of interior-exterior relationship of a writer to their environment and relationship also to bodies of knowledge, which is why when the sort of the question of like investigative journalism, he's talking to academics, he's talking to business people, and that it just is how something is it's a question that like the book implicitly asks, which is always a good question.
I love it. I've not read the last 2, so I need to go and read those. Kelly, if you read any of those books, let us know. And for everyone else, if you want to have your question read on air, email askthestacks@thestackspodcast.com. Okay, I am very excited for this part. Now we get into your favorite books or the books of your life and all of these things. So we're starting where we always start: 2 books you love, 1 book you hate.
Okay. 2 books I love. Oh gosh, I love so many books. How do I even narrow this down? Okay, I'll say this one. I love Zora Neale Hurston's Moses, Man of the Mountain. That's one that people don't talk about that much. That's really a beautiful story of Hagar. I also love, this is a philosophical book, Elaine Scarry's On Beauty and Being Just, which is a book that's a sort of a cause for understanding beauty as a virtue, which is interesting. And the relationship between or the idea that the conception of what is just as beautiful, that's really compelling. Oh gosh, a book I hate. Okay, I got in trouble for this before, and I'm just going to say it again. I got in so much trouble. Pride and Prejudice. I hate Jane
Pride
Austen.
and Prejudice. Oh my God, I'm with you. You will not get in trouble here. This is a safe space for hating books that everyone else apparently thinks are great.
When I said, and they published it in the New York Times with a headline that I didn't like Jane Austen, people wrote letters to the editor. People wrote letters to me. They wrote letters to the president of the university. Where I work, she should know better. She's educated. She should know you're supposed to like Jane Austen. It's really fascinating.
Wait,
yeah, but I can't.
The university where you work, aka Princeton.
Yes.
You may have heard of it, people.
You may have heard of it. Yes.
Ivy.
My little job.
Yeah. Okay. What's the last just really great book you've read?
Oh, you know what I just finished recently. This is actually a really hard season because I haven't had time to read and write like I usually do, and I'm really
Is that because
struggling.
you're doing press for this book?
Yeah, and traveling around and just sort of like it's hard to just kind of totally unplug. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I just read The Fortune Men by Nadifa Muhammad, and it's
Okay.
a really beautiful story about a Somali man who is falsely accused of murder in post-war England.
Oh,
And but it's just sort of incredibly intimate, and also deals with religion somewhat too. And it's a hard novel, but it's really extraordinarily composed. So
in your regular not doing press for your book and doing tourist time, how do you read? Are you reading multiple books at once? Are you sort of reading for pleasure and for work, or are you more of a what I call a one book pony?
okay, so with nonfiction, I'm always reading multiple books at once because so much of the nonfiction reading is either for teaching or for writing references, or it's like a lot. There's this sort of the academic grind to read
Right.
constantly. For pleasure reading, I'm very, very much a fiction person, and I
Okay.
will, if I have the time, I'll read a book in one sitting.
Oh, wow. Are you a fast reader?
I am, this is one thing I will say, I will brag about. I am a scarily fast reader.
Oh,
I
really?
can read really, really, and my friends make a thing. So one of my friends asked me to read her manuscript. So I said, okay, I have notes. And she said she was thinking, oh God, like she should just said she didn't have time to read it because it was a couple hours later. And she's like, she just said she didn't have time to read instead of pretending. She said, and then you had all these extensive notes. And I
Oh
was
my
like, yeah, I read really
gosh.
fast. But I read books over and over again. And
Got it.
so, yeah, but fiction and memoir, I love
Got
for
it.
pleasure. And those, yeah.
I'm so jealous. I'm a very slow reader. Which I hate. I just want to read. There's just too many books I want to read. I'm like, I
There's
wish I
so
could go
many books.
faster. But I can't. So it's my
But
lot
then
in life.
but then the books, sometimes the best, it's so bad because you like swallow, it's like with dessert. And then you get
Mm,
this great book and then you've swallowed it and you want to reread it, but you have to give a little time
little
and
time.
you wish
Yeah.
you savored it. And so, yeah, it's
Well,
good for work, but I don't know that
yeah.
it's good for the pleasure reading.
I meant to ask you this earlier for your work because like whenever I Google you and I read your like bylines and all your things, it's always like you have like a million jobs. But when you're because you have a law degree and you have
Yeah,
a PhD and you have all these things, when you're teaching, are
yeah.
you like each semester, are you teaching in different fields or do you have to like pick a department to work? Like, how does that work
Oh,
for you?
yeah, I mean, I teach, all of my classes are in African American studies. That's
Okay.
the home department for all of them. So I teach classes that are interdisciplinary. So,
Okay.
for example, I teach, yeah, like introduction to African American studies, obviously, but African American intellectual tradition. I teach a course called Race in the City, which includes, memoir literature, but also sociological literature about the creation of cities and like, yeah, yeah. So they go inside the class and move
Got it.
across
So
the.
you sort of like can build your own class that includes
Mhm.
different things. Okay, got it. I was like, how does that work? Does she have to just decide like, okay,
Yeah.
2019, I'm in the law department or whatever.
No.
Got it, got it. Is there a book that you are looking forward to reading?
Oh, I am looking forward to Dolan Perkins Valdez's next book, Take My Hand.
Okay.
And I loved her first novel. I mean, I've loved all of her work, but her first novel, Winch, which was about this resort. It's a historical fiction, work of historical fiction, but about a resort where, enslavers took the women they had enslaved who were,
Whoa.
as, they basically held as, institutionalized victims of sexual violence when they were concubines, is what they were called. And so the first novel was about that. And then the second novel, she was this beautiful work about a woman who was a psychic. And this novel takes place in Alabama. So I'm really excited. So her work is historical fiction that centers Black women. So
I love
super
that.
looking forward to that. Yeah.
And then how do you decide how do you decide what you're gonna read? Do you read reviews? Are you having like books sent to you? Do you have friends that suggest like who do you
Yeah.
trust to tell you what you want to read?
I trust my friends. My
Okay.
friends have magnificent taste in books. And I have particular friends who I always take their reading recommendations. So Kiese, of course, and
Same.
Eddie, Eddie
He's my
Glaude.
number one. Anytime I'm like, do I
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
read this? I'm like, do you know
He
this?
says,
Should I
read
read
it.
it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and also Eddie and Sarah Broom. Like
Okay,
those three, if they
got it.
say to read something, I'll read it. But also it's so exciting now. Yeah, people send books to me
Yeah.
and I almost always try to pick them up and read. But it's also really hard, and I know this is so 10 times harder for you than for me. But you realize when there are so many good books, like you just can't possibly pay attention to all of this
Yeah.
incredible work, and it's hard
It's
because you
hard.
want writers to know
Yeah.
you've done
It's
something
really
awesome.
sad. It's really like
Yeah.
I just got Elizabeth Alexander's new book, The Trayvon Generation,
Oh,
and it's like
yes.
so tiny and slim and I want to read it like right today, right
Right now.
now.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have an interview on Tuesday and I still have 150 pages there. And I have an interview like and I'm just like, fuck, I can't
Yeah.
like I'm like, when
Yeah.
am I
Right.
gonna get to this book? I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna see if my husband can be with my kids all day today and tomorrow so that I can try to like read two books, but we'll see. But I do know that feeling of like you want, and then I want to read so many classics because I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
very well read on like a lot of older books. Like I know some of them, but there's just so many
There's
books
so many.
that I want to go back to and like to help me understand what I'm reading now. But anyways, okay. What's a book that you like to recommend to people?
Oh, so this one, this is easier. I still think that the book that every young person should read is Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart.
That's one I
I
haven't
just,
read.
it's you should read, and it's I mean it's you can read it in one sitting, but just to think about modernity in terms of, you know, encounter, domination, settlement, and what does it mean for one world to pass away and a new world to begin. I just think that's something that every young person needs to know about
Mm,
human history, like what that meant for the reorganization of the world. And so it's this very particular perspective, but I think it opens a frame of reference that helps us understand everything else. So yeah, I
this
highly
just
recommend that one.
You're making me think of another question I have for you, which is sort of more because I want to know the answer. You have two sons that we
I do.
got to know about in Breathe, and I'm wondering, are they readers? Do you all have like a relationship to books together, or is that not something that's part of their lives at this point?
My older son is more of a reader than my younger son. But but we do read things together. We
Mm,
always did when they were younger. But they're readers in the other way. Like, so they're kind of interpreters. Like they have
mm,
that set of kind of critical. I mean, my oldest son is in college also, so of course he's reading all the. I mean, yeah, yeah, they read for school all the time,
right,
which
right,
is
right.
another thing too. But sort of the way that they when we watch films together, or it's the kind of assessment of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
Um,
like
yeah, they're they're
critics.
they're critics. Yeah, that's the right word. And they're but they are beautiful writers, both of them.
I love that.
Um,
I
so
really want my children to be readers, so I'm just like to suck
yeah,
up information from other
it's
parents who have.
hard though because like I mean I don't and especially for someone my age, right? So I'll be 50 this year. Like there is nothing to do for so much of every day besides read, right?
Right,
Like
right.
when I was a kid, like literally nothing else to do. Like
Right,
and that's
right.
because there were like even I watched a ton of TV as a kid, but everything was reruns. So
Right,
even that would get boring, right? So it's
right.
it's much harder to become a voracious reader now. But
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. You said that you love memoir and fiction. Are there any genres that you're not that into or that you avoid?
Hmm. I don't like, okay, I want to make a distinction here. I really like self-help books, which
Okay.
is, I think would surprise people, but I do. I like the find your best self, like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
genre
yeah.
of book, or like, touch your spirit. But I don't, but I don't like instructional books about social problems very much. Like I don't like the this is how we're going to, end sexism type
Oh,
book.
like I call those like race self-help books, like those kind of
Yeah.
ones. Yeah, I don't love those either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Do you have a favorite bookstore?
Oh, I love so many bookstores.
I
I
know.
mean, I love in Philly, I love Uncle Bobby's. I love
Yeah.
Shakespeare's Sister. I haven't been to Harriet's Bookshop, but I love the folks there. Like we've
Yeah.
done. Um, I love Charis Books in Atlanta. I love Harvard Bookstore in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I love Women and Children First in Chicago and
So
Unabridged.
many.
Like I have a lot of,
So
and I
many.
associate them with, places I've spent a lot of time.
Yeah. This might be a taboo question, and you can just tell me to fuck off. Do you have a favorite of your books?
Oh, that's such a good question.
I don't know if you're allowed
Um,
to ask an author that, but you have 7. I think you have the most books besides Jason Reynolds of any guest I've ever had on the show.
oh, thank
So,
you. I mean, I love Breathe because my children are my favorite people in the world by
mm,
far, by far, by far. And so anything that has anything to do with them. The book I had the most fun writing, I can answer that, was May We Forever Stand,
mm,
because so much, and that's for people, I assume people haven't read it, but it's a book that's a history of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the song known as the Black National Anthem. And it was so much fun because I was in these archives that were just so delightful, where I'm like just reading school programs that describe what people were dressed, what they were wearing, and what music they listened to, and the
mm,
order of ceremony, and memoirs. And they talk about, like, their principals and their teachers and how wonderful they was. It's like it was such, for someone who has spent so much time researching racial violence and Jim Crow laws and
right.
exclusion, to be enmeshed in this gorgeous world that Black adults built for Black children to try to protect them in the archive was heaven. It was so much fun.
I I wonder about like the range of your work
Hmm.
because you have written so many books about like really different things,
Hmm.
like Lorraine Hansberry and like
Yeah.
hip hop. And like, I'm
Yep.
just wondering, how do you decide what you are wanting to spend time with for a book? Because I know your books, you don't
Yeah.
write them in a month. I know you're not one of those like, let me just sit down and
No.
do 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 do
Oh
do.
no.
So how do you
Years.
decide what you want to spend time with, and like what is your leading force in making a decision about what you want to write about?
It's definitely passion. I am not, deliberate. Like, there are people who will say to me, "Oh, you should write about such and such because that would be really popular," and that's like almost an immediate turn off. Like, I don't care, because so it's all passion. I think it's sort of, but my mind is going into 1,000 directions at once every day, and I sort of throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. I'm a silly putty generation person, so
Okay.
like, it's like, so you're
Yeah.
gonna throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks, and go back to ideas and turn them over in your head and go down rabbit holes. And if you sometimes a rabbit hole is interesting for a half a day. Like, sometimes I'll write one of my friends and I'll be like, I'm gonna write a book about this. And I'll be like, okay, Imani, whatever. And then by tomorrow I'm tired of it, right? But then some
Right.
things stay
Okay.
with you over years. And
Right.
so it's sort of what stays, or stays and grows, or pushes you in new directions. And
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Because
So
you had a year or like, I don't know, 16 months or something a few years back where you published like 3 things. But was that just because they just all came together at the end? Or were
yeah.
you like, so you were working on them, maybe one for 7 years and one for 2
I
years and
was
like,
working on, so I had 3 books come out in 2018, and I had been working on all of them for 5, 6, or 7 years.
wow, that's just,
Yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
crazy thing.
every one of them.
Your
Yeah.
bibliography, people are going to be like, wait,
What
what?
happens here? Yeah,
You're
they
like, what?
do.
Yeah, it's very
And
confusing.
it's hard because people think, but there are people who say to me, "Oh, well, you should slow down." And I'm like, dude, like, it takes me a long time to write, and I spend a lot of time researching. Like, it literally is because I don't work on things one at a time, because that's not how my mind works.
Right.
Like, I will wind up with writer's block. I'll get frustrated.
Mm,
I have to be able to turn my attention elsewhere and take a break. It's just, so I have just found the thing that makes this pleasurable for me instead
I
of
see.
tortuous.
I see.
But there are people who find that troubling. So
So like you'll be working on one book and get stuck and be like, okay, let me just go over here and write about this other thing. And so it's sort of
hmm,
just like a different, I see. That's
yeah.
so interesting. Huh.
Hmm.
I have the opposite kind of mind. I have to be like zeroed in on like one thing. I more so. I just like I can't read a lot of books at once. Like I really got to just
Uh-huh.
be zoned
Yeah.
in. Okay, this is sort of our lightning round. So you're just gonna kind of name off these titles when they come
Oh,
to you.
okay.
Okay, what's the last book that made you laugh?
Oh gosh. Oh, Black Moses.
Okay, what's the last book that made you cry?
Hmm. When's the last book that made probably South to America?
Okay,
My own book. Yeah.
okay. What's the last book that made you angry?
Oh, I know. I just read because I was looking at it again for a different interview. I'll Take My Stand, which was a book that was a bunch of Southerners of the who were belonged to this group called the Fugitives put together. That was kind of a justification for segregation and like the Southern right wing, and they're the same people who were the kind of who shaped new criticism and English literature and stuff. And it's just a kind of awful collection
So,
of people.
sounds like a lovely bunch.
Yes.
What's the last book where you felt like you learned a lot?
I don't know if it's the last book where I felt I learned a lot, but I definitely learned a lot from Begin Again. Eddie Glaube's Begin Again
Mm,
about Baldwin's lessons for a time helped me think about the world differently. I've been thinking, it helped me think about instead of like I have this frame with thinking about race as like in terms of contradiction as opposed to for so long as opposed to thinking about how this system was designed as not even necessarily intentional, but that as having all of it's not contradiction as much as like
hmm
internal incoherence that is very deliberate, and that
mm.
helped me with thinking about South to America. But I keep sort of turning those concepts over in my mind that were in that book. Yeah,
What's a book that brings you joy?
Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place always
Mm,
brings me joy. Oh, Song of Solomon always brings me
mm.
joy.
Do you think that Song of Solomon has a hopeful ending?
Not really.
When
I
I
don't
read it, I
know.
really thought it
You
did,
did?
and
Well,
I
that's good
really felt like it was like a happy ending. I know that it might not be. When we talked about it on the show, I realized that maybe I was tripping, but
though. No, but it's I think it's ambiguous. So there
yeah,
you go. I
I
mean,
don't
I just
know.
Pilot. My friend Gina years ago said to me, Pilot Dead is my hero, and I had read it and I went back and I was like, she's my hero too, and so that's why they yeah. So her vision of the world is what endures. So to me, that to a extent,
Mm,
it has a happy lesson or meaning. Like I feel
yeah.
like, yeah, Pilot is,
Okay.
is the hero of
Yeah,
the
for
literary
sure.
world. Yes.
She is. I'm a big guitar stan. I love
Oh,
guitar.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really interesting
Yeah,
and
guitars
very
really
Leo of you.
very Leo of me,
Yeah.
right? It's very pathological. Uh, are there any books that you're embarrassed that you still have not read?
No, I don't.
No, you've
I mean, I will admit in a heartbeat if they're about classics that I haven't read. There's so many books.
yeah, so many books. What's your problematic favorite book?
Oh, problematic favorite. Neruda's memoirs,
Mm, hmm
because
hmm
he describes a sexual assault.
Yeah, yeah.
The horrific. And I had to spend a lot of time reflecting on why I read past that scene as though I wasn't reading what I was reading multiple times.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's the seduction of beauty. You have to be we have to be really careful about things that we find beautiful or bring us pleasure, as wonderful as they are, because
yeah.
they can, yeah. Anyway, we know that
That's
lesson from
yeah.
in a million different ways. Yeah.
A million different ways. I mean, you are a professor, but if you were a high school teacher, what's a book you would assign in class?
Well, I've assigned it multiple times in college, but I would also assign it in high school. Anne Moody's Coming of Age in Mississippi,
Hmm.
which is Moody was an organizer who was in SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and an organizer in Mississippi Freedom Summer and the Civil Rights Movement. And she was a native of the Mississippi Delta, and she wrote this memoir about her coming of age and growing up in conditions of just incredible Delta poverty and becoming an activist and going to school. But it's just a stunningly crafted memoir. It's so beautiful, so evocative and meaningful, and everybody who reads it is transformed by it. And so when I've taught it that's the book that every student connects to.
All right, I need to read it. My
And
list is growing
it's a
today.
slow book. It's a slow
Okay.
book too. Like you probably honestly you want to read in the summer, like when you have
Okay.
more time because it's
Well,
long.
I don't have
You
summer's
don't
the
have
same
more
for
time at the
me.
time,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
But
not a
see,
teacher in school.
Duh.
Summer
Yes.
is
See,
the
there you
same.
go. You're an
Okay.
educator, but you're not a teacher in school. Yes.
Yes, I am. Am I an educator? I don't think so.
Absolutely.
I don't think of myself that way, but thank you. That makes me feel smart. Who would you want? You can't say yourself. Who would you want to write the book of your life?
Oh, one of my children.
Mm.
Absolutely one of my children. They see so much that I don't see. I know. Also, neither of them would ever want to do that, but I'm just saying that's what I would want.
Well, maybe they'll hear this and be inspired.
I doubt it. Like, no, we're gonna write something interesting. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, maybe they can weave you in. Maybe they'll have your same mind where they'll be able to like bring you in like you brought so many of your people into South to America. Okay, this is my last one, and I stole this from the New York Times by the book. If you could require the current president to read one book, what would it be?
Oh, what a great question.
It's so good. Can't take credit.
Yeah. It might be Exit West.
Oh, so good. That's the first book club book we ever did on this show.
Yeah, it's so stunning and
Mm-hmm.
it's honest, but
Mm-hmm.
it also like makes you imagine. As my friend Sean Crawley says, imagine otherwise. Like it makes you want to think about how to arrange a different kind of world. It's just this incredibly brilliant use of the speculative to make you imagine something other than the kind of cruelty of the current world. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
He
one.
has a new book coming out this year.
Oh,
I'm so
see
excited.
that when that day everything will shut down for that.
I know.
book.
Yeah. That I can't remember what it's called. It's called like The Last White Man or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember, but it's coming out later this year. I'm very excited. All right, everybody. This has been a conversation with Imani Perry. Imani will be back on March 30th. We are reading A Mercy for the Stacks Book Club by Toni Morrison. I will just let everyone know I'm very nervous for this conversation. I cannot wait. So you'll have to read the book. You have 5 Wednesdays in March, so you have extra time to read the book. You also need to go out and get Imani's newest book, South to America. You can get it wherever books are sold. If you've already read it, go get one of her other 6 books. There's plenty of work for you to do, people. Read Imani's books. They're all amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Tracy.
And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, that does it for us today. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to Imani for being my guest. I'd also like to thank Caitlin Mulroney-Liskey for helping coordinate this interview. Remember, the Stacks Book Club pick for March is A Mercy by Toni Morrison, and we will be discussing the book on Wednesday, March 30th with Imani Perry. If you love the show and want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack. And make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter, and check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. Our editor is Christian Duenas, our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.